Something big happened today, and a lot of people are not going to talk about it as they should. Stefanik from New York, who is supposed to be the UN ambassador, Donald Trump called her in. In other words, we need you to stay in Congress. That's one vote. And you have to ask yourself why. And the reason why is likely what we see, the tea leaves, in a plus 35 and a plus 15 Trump district. Two Democrats won one-handedly, the other one that by 1 point. But it's still an important win because these are people that wouldn't blindly vote for a Democrat. And that's what happened in Pennsylvania on Tuesday. And we'll see what happens in the Supreme Court, in the Wisconsin Supreme Court on Tuesday, and the 2 seats in Florida on Tuesday as well next week, to see if the pattern continues or not. And remember, even in those Florida districts, the Democrats it would be nice if they won, but it's not about them winning. It's about seeing by how much a Republican wins if they win, and see how that performs relative to the county. So again, the reality is the fact that Donald Trump pulled Stefanik points out that in their internal numbers, they are running scared for those 2 Florida seats. And then don't forget that seat in New York if Stefanik were to leave. So again, we'll see what happens. But I want you to listen to this analysis by Jonathan Martin after the Wall Street Journal article and Brzezinski talks about the issue, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Democrats are celebrating a pair of victories this week in the battleground state of Pennsylvania, a state that President Trump won last November. Democrat James Malone narrowly won a special election for a state Senate seat in an East Pennsylvania district that has been represented by a Republican for the last 136 years.
Honestly, we went down to knocking on doors and talking to every single person. I have support from a good chunk of Republicans who do not have a problem with the things that are being cut. They have a problem with how it's being done.
Out of more than 180,000 registered voters in the district, 53% are Republicans and about 30% are Democrats. Trump won the county last year by 15 points. The win comes after another Democrat in a Pennsylvania House race won a special election on Tuesday.
Okay, I think he won. I think we can safely say
majority control of the state house in the Democratic Party's hands by a single seat. That win by Democrats in Pennsylvania caught the attention of the Wall Street Journal editorial board. In its latest editorial entitled "A Shock to the GOP from MAGA Country," it writes in part, Democrats have been lost in the wilderness since Donald Trump's victory, but if Tuesday's special election shocker in Pennsylvania is any harbinger, the MAGA Republican ascendancy is perishable. Republicans might want to take this surprise loss in MAGA country as a warning. Mr. Trump's tariff threats are whipsawing financial markets and their broader economy. The conference board said Tuesday that its survey of consumer confidence showed a drop in March for the 4th consecutive month. Even voters who like the GOP's policy agenda could be jolted by the impression of chaos in Washington, plus Mr. Trump's recent focus on retribution. Democrats got pummeled last year because they followed out-of-touch leaders down ideological rabbit holes. Republicans will suffer if they do the same thing in reverse.
Okay, and again, that's the Wall Street Journal editorial page. It's interesting, Jonathan Martin. I always remember back to 2017. And you saw elections, and one of the first warning signs, and again, this could all change next week. Maybe Republicans win in Wisconsin and that massive race there. This could all change. But I do remember back in 2017 reading something about Delaware County, which is in the Philly suburbs. They elected county commissioners for the first time in 100 years. If it happens one time, it's a blip. If you start seeing things like this one after another, like that Florida special election that right now Steve Bannon and others are concerned about, if the Republican wins by a couple of points, even that's a warning sign. You know, it's like, but this happens in off years. You can really start to see how things are going. Too early to say yet, but this certainly is scaring a lot of Republicans.
Yeah, look, we ought to stipulate that the tables have turned in modern American politics. It used to be that the Republicans benefited, Joe, when there was less turnout. That's changed now. Democrats now have an advantage in off years and special elections when turnout is typically high information, highly engaged voters who follow the news really closely. So Democrats do better in these kind of circumstances. But that's precisely what we're going to be having here in 2025 and 2026. And this is why the GOP should be alarmed, because Democrats are energized. Why are they energized? For the same reasons they were in 2017. As you mentioned, there's a backlash against Trump and his policies, exacerbated by Elon Musk this time, by the way, which wasn't there in 17. And that is going to give Democrats a turnout edge in the special elections this year and in the gov races in Jersey and Virginia. And that leads to the midterms next year, where you'll probably see the same energy that you saw in 2018. And the great question going forward is, for Democrats, is what happens when you have a bigger turnout election, like in a presidential cycle, when folks show up who are infrequent voters who don't pay that close attention? Can Democrats finally win those people over? The most ominous crosstab, I thought, from last year's election, Joe, was the split between people who follow the news, who follow politics, and those who really don't, and those who don't. And the people who are highly engaged, who show up in March in a special election in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, they're watching Morning Joe. They're reading the Journal and the Times. What I'm just uncertain about is, can Dems get folks back in presidential cycles who don't follow the news? Because if they can't, it's going to be damn hard.
First of all, I want to let you absorb something important that Jonathan Martin said, because it is also something that we noticed in the last election. People who watch the news in general, Kamala Harris won those votes handedly. In other words, people who are informed won Kamala Harris's vote handedly. The people who did not follow the news, did not follow politics, or were tethered to right-wing news, they voted a little bit more so for Donald Trump. Not by a lot, but a little. You got to remember, this was a very close election. And what Jonathan Martin points out is that the people that are likely to be voting in this year's election and next year's elections are likely to be a bit more informed. Well, at least for this year's election. For next year's election, what he's calling out is like, will the American people be an informed part of the base coming out to vote or not? That is not the question that I'm dealing with. First of all, I want to ensure that the people that are voting in these special elections, they're running scared. No bills have been passed yet, so their vote has an immediate impact on what Congress is doing right now. If the Republicans lose in a landslide in Florida, you know what's going to happen. All the Republicans in the House are going to panic, and Donald Trump's idea of a tax cut, Donald Trump's idea of all these other issues is moot, because there are more of them that want to win than simply sacrifice themselves for Donald Trump and then go off into oblivion. Because, Donald Trump can promise you, well, even if you lose, I'll take care of you after you lose. They know that means absolutely nothing. So if there is a bad night on Tuesday for Republicans, let's say they lose one seat in Florida, and let's say they lose the Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin, I think Donald Trump's policies they're over, especially now that he's doing the tariff that's going to increase the cost of cars anywhere from $3,000 to $15,000. Yeah, I think that would be over. But again, notice what he says. The voters who are informed, vote Democratic, vote progressives. And I want to talk to my MAGA brothers and sisters. If you want to ensure that you get the things that you claim you want, that is how you have to vote. You've got to stop buying into the lies. You have to stop being fooled. You have to stop being gullible. You have to stop your prejudice. You have to stop all these things and vote your pocketbook. Nobody asks you to like anybody, but just vote your pocketbook.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.